45 years, 0 name changes, new offices, more staff, improved technology to better serve you. Education, services, investments. Think real estate, think Marshall Reddick. Brokerage, property management, private lending, creating financial independence through real estate since 1979.
So we're getting some thumbs up, so we're gonna get this party started here and talk about a topic that I think we're both excited to.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a good one.
Yeah, I'm converting your home into investment property. I think it's like the first step a lot of people take when they start investing in real estate, and it's a beginning to hopefully a long journey for a lot of folks. That's how I got started in real estate. It's actually how I enrolled real estate investing, and it's how my parents got started in real estate investing. So I'm got a lot of good content, and my name's Chris Carlson, and Tasso Spathos is my partner for tonight.
Yeah, hi,
we're
everybody.
both advisors at Marshall Reddick, and we're gonna jump off here. And Tasso, I'll let you take it away.
Totally, yeah. Thank you again, everyone, for hopping on. So my name is Tasso. A little bit about myself. I've been a licensed realtor in the state of California for just about 6 years now. I graduated from Cal State University, Long Beach with my bachelor's in business administration. I have 2 years of direct property management experience where I spent most of my time coordinating maintenance, leasing property, and really working on all aspects of property management in general. And the portfolio would range from single family up until about 30 units. I am a student pilot. I have a husky, and I love to play basketball. I try to go 2 to 3 times a week just to get the exercise in, and a little healthy competition is always awesome.
When you get your pilot license, Tasso, are you gonna take me for a
you'll
plane
be the
ride?
first guy I call. Yeah, totally.
That'd be great.
I've completed real estate transactions in California, Texas, and Tennessee, and I am a mortgage fund investor here at our Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund. Awesome stuff. So topics we're going to be covering tonight, what makes a good rental property. We'll be going through the ins and outs of what we look for, how to get your home rent ready, a couple of helpful steps, determining market rent and leasing tips, tenant screening and placement, a very important part of finding a tenant, the screening process, and then what does professional property management entail?
Yeah, and I think something to just really chime in real quick, Tasso, is not every property is really created equal, right? Like every market is a little different, every property is a little bit different, and not every property is going to have the same strategy.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And maybe some properties are perfect for Airbnb, and some properties are perfect for long-term rentals, and others are going to make great for turning your primary into a long-term rental. A good example might be like if you've got a property in a fantastic neighborhood, you don't have to put a ton of work into it to get it rent ready for a new tenant. That would be something that might make a really good investment property long-term. So that's what we're going to cover. We're going to give you guys a couple of examples, and we're going to run through the numbers too. Everyone wants to look at the financial analysis to make sure that this is going to work. So as advisors, we work at Marshall Reddick as advisors, and as advisors, we'll be able to provide you the really detailed analysis of whether or not your particular situation would make sense to convert it into investment property.
Absolutely, yeah. So what we expect from you guys as attendees, we hope that you take something and learn from the topics we go over this evening. Please feel free to take notes. If at any point during the presentation you have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat and we'll make sure to get to it. If any questions come up that you'd like a little bit more in-depth explanation on, please write them down so that we can circle back on them in a consultation and really go in depth. Be ready to write down any links that may come up in any slides. And remember that a recording of this presentation along with the slides will be emailed 24 hours after its completion.
Yeah, and Tasso and I will also give you all a call to make sure you guys got everything you needed as well. So we'll be able to follow up with you, but feel free to write stuff in the chat if you have any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so some of you may be familiar with Marshall Reddick, and for others, it may be your first time hearing about us. So we are a full service real estate firm, and we have 4 divisions within the company. The first division is our real estate brokerage. We help people buy and sell their primary homes, as well as buy and sell investment property. Nationwide, we did around 600 transactions last year, and we currently manage about 90% of those. And they are investment transactions that we manage. So to kind of second on that, our next division is our property management. So we take care of everything for the landlord, from leasing to maintenance, renovations, rent collections, and pretty much all those aspects, so that all the landlord needs to do is collect a rent check every month. The third division is our private lending. So sometimes when you can't qualify for conventional financing, you'll need private financing. So Marshall Reddick provides non-owner occupied real estate loans to borrowers doing fix and flips, new construction, and purchasing investment property. And our fourth and final division is our mortgage investing. So the same way you can own real estate and collect rent checks, our investors own mortgages and then collect mortgage payments. I personally invest in the Marshall Reddick Mortgage Fund and collect a quarterly distribution, as does Chris.
Yeah, no, that's a great asset class to invest in, which is mortgages, or a mortgage fund where we pool mortgages together, we raise capital, then we lend out that capital to private borrowers like those fix and flippers, like those new developers, new construction developers, and you get a really passive income stream coming in. We do quarterly distributions, and every year it's been yielding at least 8.5%, which I'm very happy with, and it's very easy to collect that check. So Marshall Reddick handles all of the risk analysis and underwriting.
Yeah. Moving on to our next slide, this is our footprint. So we are broadcasting live from our Orange County office here in Newport Beach, California. In the state of California, we also have our Los Angeles office, and we have a Riverside office. Move over to Texas, we have our San Antonio office, New Braunfels office, and our Austin office. All these offices are conveniently connected to the I-35 freeway. It's kind of a south to north ordeal, New Braunfels being right in the middle. And then our newly founded Austin office in Houston, newest office to the Marshall Reddick community. Moving over to Tennessee, we have our Nashville and Clarksville office. And then over in Florida, we have our Cape Coral office.
Yeah, and I think the most important takeaway here is that none of those locations are chosen by accident, right?
No, they're not. And
very intentional.
Yeah, and it brings us to our next slide. This is what we look for in a good market. So super important. The first item we have on here is the job market. These markets, they have to have stable employment, with unemployment being under the national average. The second item we look for is that vacancy needs to be low, meaning there needs to be a strong demand for rental listings in that particular city. Number three is the economies must be diverse and not reliant upon one employer. So economic diversity, we want to see several sectors in the area, such as government jobs. We want to see education, manufacturing, tech, healthcare, and so on, diverse.
For those of you that might be a little bit older than Tasso here, you might think of Detroit as a prime example of a city or a town, metropolitan area that was heavily reliant on one industry, that the auto industry, manufacturing industry. Once that was taken away and outsourced and offshored, it took decades for the city to recover. Not even fully recovered, obviously. So I think we even see some similarities with places like San Fran. They're heavily reliant on the tech industry and tourism. And once one of those goes away, you kick out one leg of the chair and it's not very stable. So we look for places that have a lot of employers over a wide, diverse range of industries.
Yeah, absolutely. Point number 4 is home affordability. Homes need to be affordable. This means investors have access to these properties without massive amounts of capital, and there's a lot of runway for potential appreciation, right? We want to make sure that the market is landlord friendly. We want laws that favor landlords opposed to the tenants.
Yeah, in California, where we're sitting, I think evictions are measured in months and months and months, if not years. And in Texas and in Florida, Tennessee, they measure those evictions in days and weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a vast difference. And there's a lot more favorable laws in those markets than there are in other states like California, unfortunately.
Yeah. Point number 6, we want to have a strong education presence. We love strong education because those turn into white collar jobs that give us a great base for stable tenants, gives us a great base for stable, higher salaries, and we can increase the rents. Yeah. And then our last point is reliable property management. So what we mean here is that we want to make sure that there's a variety of property managers in the area so that our owners have competing firms, so that you as the investor are not reliant on just one property manager, but you can do some digging for yourself.
Yeah, I've had clients that have invested in really tiny little towns on like Harrington, Kansas comes to mind. It's like a town of 10,000 people, and then it looks good on paper, but once the property manager leaves, you're kind of left holding the bag and you don't have any replacement. So larger metropolitan areas is definitely what you're going to see a consistent theme in the markets that we select for our clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is the photo that I think that makes us smile with pride a lot.
Yeah.
Is we get to work with a lot of these individuals. These are folks that are located in all of our different offices across our different states, and none of this works without their input, without their hard work. We can't maximize your returns without property managers and analysts and real estate professionals, real estate agents, and marketing teams, and accounting. So all of that makes a fantastic team that's working hard on your behalf to optimize your assets.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great team. To start off, to kind of point out, we went through the offices. On the top left, we have our new Braunfels office, that big blue sign. If you're driving down the I-35 freeway, you can definitely see it.
I think you can see it from outer space.
Yeah, move over to the top right, we have our San Antonio team. Bottom left, we have our Florida office over in Cape Coral. That's us over here in Newport Beach, right in the middle. And then we have our Tennessee office on the bottom right.
Centrally is Orange County. You can see Tasso and I as goofy faces right there. And thanks for the lovely introduction, Tasso.
Yeah.
My name's Chris. I've been a licensed realtor since 2013. I've been licensed in multiple states, and I've always focused on investment real estate. I've done well over 100 sales transactions and almost 1,000 leasing transactions at this point, to be honest. And I own investment property out of state as well. So I invest and try and walk the walk and talk the talk kind of thing. I'm kind of had my fingers in a lot of different pots when it comes to different strategies like 1031 exchanges, multifamily value adds, renovation, project management kind of stuff, multifamily, single family, all that good stuff, but all residential for the most part. And I invest in our mortgage fund, as I mentioned. And I think what we really want to cover today is what makes a good rental property, not just a property that you're going to turn from your primary residence into an investment, but just a good rental property in general. And we want to see something that has potential for cash flow and growth, right? Cash flow, while it isn't, an extra $50 in your bank account isn't going to get you rich. We like to see positive cash flow just because when times get hard, eventually, things can be tough, whether in your personal life or globally or macroeconomics. We want to make sure that that asset has a little bit of cash flow so you feel like you have that safety cushion. Because real estate's a long game. It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's a build wealth slowly over time plan, right? So we want to make sure that the property's cash flowing so you guys feel comfortable on any of your assets. And secondly, this seems small, but it's important, is we want to see a property that's unfurnished with all the necessary appliances and that it's rent ready, meaning that it's ready for a new tenant to move in without needing to worry about paint touch-ups and appliances they got to buy. And they're not worrying about, is the roof falling off or anything like that. We want the house in spick and span condition from a code and compliance perspective and from a cosmetic perspective, because that's going to mean a tenant that's going to stay in your house long term, 3 to 5 years, which is our average tenancy for our single family assets.
It is.
So we do a really good job of making sure your house is rent ready before we'd ever market it. And you also want to consider liability. Is your property in a fire zone, right? Is it something that needs a lot of work to make it code compliant. Sometimes if you have a house that's built in 1950 and you haven't touched it since 1970, you might need to put a lot of work into it to make it rent ready, and maybe it doesn't make sense for you to do that work to convert it into an investment, right? Maybe it makes a lot more sense to sell it and reinvest that capital into a new construction property, or in out-of-state real estate, or maybe in just an index fund or the mortgage fund, for example. And of course, we think property management goes hand in hand with a good rental property. I get calls, and Tasso gets calls all the time from owners that have backed themselves into a corner, that didn't screen their tenants properly, that didn't get homes rent ready, and so now they have code violations that the tenant's complaining on. They have the city inspecting their property, and it's a whole can of worms that we have to untangle for them to make sure that their rental property is being optimized. And that's when they call us, the property managers. They call us to help, unscrew the issues that they've created.
Step in and provide some assistance, because this is what we do, and we spend a lot of time on it. And we have a great group of folks who are really well versed in the laws and rules of what needs to take place.
100%.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the term rent ready. What's the rent ready process, and why are we doing it? Well, this is a bit of a mouthful, but I think it bears reading, which is we want to get your house rent ready to decrease the liability and deferred maintenance costs while making your property attractive rental option to high quality tenants at the highest rent possible. How we go about that is we inspect your property. Whenever you sign on with a property management agreement with us, our maintenance manager, who is fantastic at larger renovations, smaller renovations, negotiating with contractors, managing, doing inspections, is going to come through and take a look and see what needs to be done to your home to get it rent ready. So that might just be some professional cleaning sometimes. Sometimes it's painting, removing belongings, resurfacing countertops to get them sparkling clean again, and reducing that hazard and liability issue. Because if you got outdated smoke detectors, you're not code compliant. If you don't have thresholds that are properly sized, then maybe we need to rectify that. Pools that need to be fenced in, things like that, all need to be taken into consideration before you put your home on the market for rent. Because if those things aren't done in advance, you're likely going to have issues down the road when you place a tenant. You're going to get like 100 complaints day one, right? Or you're going to have the city knock on the door.
Absolutely.
So,
I always like to say that it's very important to get it done initially so that you don't hear about it later. And we provide that rent ready checklist.
Yeah, and the rent ready checklist is something that we go through. It's like a full inspection. If you purchased a house recently, you probably had an inspector. It's kind of what we do. But we kind of look at this from hey, what do we need to do from a code and compliance perspective, and maybe what should we do from a cosmetic perspective? And we figure out what the best budget is after getting multiple bids from various vendors that are all licensed, bonded, and insured contractors. Something to take into account here is that we don't profit off of maintenance at Marshall Reddick, right? We do this to help you optimize your investment. We only use third-party contractors, like I said, licensed, bonded, insured, that we've onboarded, we've been using and vetting for many years, and provide us with good pricing because we give them a lot of business. Right?
We do. We build great relationships with them. We vet them out and source them, and we use them on a lot of our projects. So our maintenance team is constantly on the phone with them, and they're usually able to provide better pricing than if you were to call as a regular owner who's just maybe finding them on Google. We actually have these relationships with these vendors. So it's a huge plus.
Yeah, because we're keeping them busy. They're giving us good pricing. And something that you'll see is if we manage your properties, everything is a pass-through charge with the estimate and invoice of the contractor that we use, right? So you see which contractors we're using. If you ever have any questions, you call us up. Anything over $500 or $400 is our threshold, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
We notify you, we get you on the horn, and we talk through the potential issue and bid everything out accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, this is something that's interesting that bears remarking on, which is a good property manager is going to understand what your property needs, not just from that code and compliance perspective, but what type of property do you have on your hands, right? We don't want to over improve assets as investors. For instance, if you've got like a 2-unit duplex in South LA, like you probably don't need to build a pool with a jacuzzi and have
Probably not.
heated pool with lighting and stuff, right? Like it's not necessary. We wouldn't make that recommendation, right? But maybe if you got a, I don't know, Manhattan Beach house or a Santa Monica pool or Santa Monica home, maybe you have a pool, maybe it makes sense to put it back in service and have the heating equipment serviced and make sure it's operable for a tenant, because when they're paying $9,000 a month in rent, and they've got kids and it's a family moving into that type of property, that's what they're going to expect. So we take all of that into consideration of the target audience of the type of tenant you're going to attract with your specific property.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next thing, after we have it rent ready, we're going to have your leasing agent. Surprise, surprise, that might be Tasso or me. We do a lot of leasing. Get your house on the market for rent. But before we do that, we want to make sure that we're securing the highest rent possible by providing you with a really thorough market analysis. We want to get you the best tenant possible in the quickest amount of time without leaving money on the table. And our job is to just communicate everything to you, just like we're doing now, right? We're doing webinars and all sorts of stuff. Well, when you hire us as a leasing agent and property manager, you get weekly calls from us and you get sick of the sound of our voices.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's super important. We are all here in this office huge callers. If you came into the office on a random Tuesday afternoon, I'm sure people would be bamboozled that everybody's walking around and on their separate phone calls, because we're very communicative here, and we like to hop on the phone and update.
Absolutely. As I said, we want to rent it as little time as possible, but we don't want to leave money on the table. We don't want to underprice the home. You know, the last thing we want is to get 300 inquiries day one and get bombarded. It's overwhelming for Tasso and I, but it also means that we may have underpriced it. So our goal is to have it on the market for a couple weeks, take time to find that really attractive tenant without having 90 days, 60 days on market with large amounts of vacancy.
Yeah.
And of course, we're going to use the state lease agreement, and California is the most challenging state. There's a million addendums and disclosures that you have to incorporate, but our team does a really good job of making sure we're up to date on all of that, implementing all of those into our leases, and quarter by quarter, year by year, changing it as we conduct meetings with our outside counsel and attorneys and read through articles with changes to state laws and local regulations.
Yeah. Looks like we got a couple questions that came in that I'd like to take some time to answer, and I'll go ahead and answer the first one. What is the screening process? So we'll kind of touch base on that in a further slide, but as far as how the whole posting goes, as far as your unit is concerned, is we would actually go and take professional photos. After we take professional photos, we use our software, which is one of the most advanced softwares in property management, to post your property. And it goes on all major sites like Zillow, apartments.com, homes.com, every big name listing site. Prospects then submit inquiries. When they submit inquiries, they populate onto our appfolio. We go in and we call each prospect individually to do an initial screening. I am a big believer that initial screening is a huge part of why we are so different, because the initial screening can make the difference of showing it to 5 very qualified prospects or 30 very unqualified prospects. And it really narrows down the type of tenant that we were placing in the home, which can save a lot of time and headache and problems if you take that extra time to screen at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's kind of a natural filter when folks talk to someone that knows what they're doing, that's done it hundreds of times, and understands how to speak with a tenant. It's not an interrogation. It's a back and forth conversation for sure. But the folks that are unqualified kind of know that we're not someone to be taken advantage of. We're a professional management company that we're going to hold them accountable and put them through a very thorough screening process, which we're going to get into in just a little bit more detail. So how much is my property going to rent for? It's the number one question that Tasso and I get. And the quick answer is it's not going to rent for more than it's worth. And how we determine that is based off of comparable properties that have recently leased nearby your home. So in your same neighborhood, we look at school districts, we look at boundaries, proximity to highways, proximity to commercial sectors. Those things impact values. We want to find similar bedrooms, similar bath count, similar square footage, and of course, similar cosmetic upgrades. A home that hasn't been rehabbed is not going to be worth the same as a home that's got brand new spanking quartz countertops and Lux hardwood floors and all sorts of great accoutrements. So when we do that, we come out with a big, large set of data that we distill down for you. We spend time with our clients every single time explaining the data and how we've come up with a suggested rent price. And so if any of you are interested in just wondering how much one of your rental properties should lease out for, we'd be happy, if it's local here in California, of course, happy to dig into that for you guys.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in any of the markets that we manage, we get one of our local agents, boots on the ground folks, to do a market analysis for you. But there's really no other way to determine the price of your rental. A lot of times I get landlords that say, well, my neighbor rented their house for $6,000 and you're telling me I can get $5,000. And the first question I ask is, how'd they screen the tenant? And have you seen a copy of their lease agreement? And they never know how they screen the tenant, and they don't have a copy of the lease agreement. And the screening of the tenant thing is really important, because a bad tenant will happily overpay rent because they have no intention of paying you the rent in the first place.
Yeah.
So that landlord, that next door neighbor, may have gotten $6,000 as opposed to the market rate of $5,000, but guess what? He's going to have major problems on his end in the future.
Mm-hmm.
So what does a leasing agent do? Well, Tasso, we kind of talked a little bit about it, but we're going to coordinate that photography. We only use professional photographs. The same photographer that takes pictures on our $2 million listings is the same guy that's going to be taking pictures on your $3,500 rental. We communicate with those prospects via phone, text, and email, and we pre-screen them over the phone before they ever see your house. Provide you those weekly activity reports. We call it touch base Tuesdays, where we're reaching out to our owners, giving them what I call the waterfall of data. How many inquiries have we got? How many showings have we received? How many applications do we have on the property? And what do those applications look like? What kind of feedback are we getting on the property? And of course, once we get those completed applications, they go through our proprietary screening process. And then eventually they're going to be signing a lease with us through the lease agreement that we use.
Real quick, before we get on to this, I'd like to answer a couple of questions that have come in. Gentleman here is asking, what online platforms are recommended when putting a property on the market? Facebook, Zillow, other instrumental database. So the answer for that would be, you would want to put it on every accredited listing site available.
Yeah.
So
all the above.
All of the above. And by doing that, you ensure that you get the absolute most amount of attention on your property. Facebook Marketplace, we don't list on Facebook Marketplace. We see that typically we get our leads from Zillow and rent.com. We get very good quality leads if the property is priced accordingly. I would not recommend Facebook, Craigslist. I wouldn't recommend that at all. No.
Those are kind of rife with scammers. I would say Zillow, apartments.com, rent.com, realtor.com, Redfin. Those are good sites. The Zillow network is pretty prominent. You got to pay a pretty penny though these days to get their premier placement, which we do. So one of the things I want to dive into is, if you're going to list your house on the market for rent, here's some of the pitfalls that we see with folks that are unable to lease their home in a reasonable time frame. If you overprice anything, you're just the only people you're going to attract are the scammers. Secondly, if you don't have it on the major websites that we just mentioned and it's not listed correctly, you're not going to get the traction that you're looking for. And poor photography. If you take a picture with a 2003 Nokia brick cell phone, it's not going to go well for you. Hire a professional photographer. You want to separate yourself from the rest of the market. And that's how you get eyes on your home, is if it's rent ready, it's vacant, there's not a bunch of clutter and pictures of your family going on vacation and Wyoming on the walls. You want to have a vacant property.
I'll give an example of that. I just recently took over a lease on a property that was listed for 47 days on the market. It was a beautiful property and it was totally nice. It was in the city of Long Beach. And it was on the market for 45 days, and we got a call to list the property. The first thing we did is we looked at the photos, and they weren't up to par. They were very unclear. It looks like they were taken on an iPhone 11, just shaky, blurry. And we're like, well, I'll point out one thing that could use major improvement is when people are looking at properties online, they want to see a little bit of a pop. That is such a big thing, is making sure that there are good photos. So we went in, we removed the listing, we took excellent photos, we repriced the property, and just began a fresh new start of marketing. And it got listed, and we leased it out in under a week.
Yeah, about a week.
It was a beautiful property. So huge role, huge
Yeah.
play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One last thing is there's a lot of realtors and management companies that just throw a lockbox, like a smart key system,
Mhm.
and they have tenants fill out a little application thing ahead of time, and they just send tenants in there, on their own, which we think is A, it's a liability problem, and
It
B,
is.
you're paying us to sell your property,
Yeah.
right? So you want your agents there present to sell your home and to make sure that no shenanigans is occurring in your
No,
house as well,
absolutely
right?
not.
You want it secure. So no lockbox showings with Marshall Reddick, that's for sure. Now, this is a great question. It's probably what I focus most on when I'm working with a new client that's interested in property management services. It's the tenant screening process. This is what separates the folks that know what they're doing and the folks that don't, and it's where the rubber meets the road. If you don't do proper screening, you're going to have problems in the future. So how do we do that? How do we make sure that we have an incredibly low eviction rate and an incredibly low default rate in our portfolio? So just to give you guys full transparency, we pull this report every single month. Our default rate here in Southern California is less than 1%. That means 99% plus of our tenants have paid rent on time this month before the 5th, right? So, and then our eviction rate out of our hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of properties that we manage in LA and Orange County, we've done a whopping 1 eviction all year for a tenant that we didn't even place. So
I would say that the eviction took place on a tenant that we did not.
Yeah, that's exactly. We didn't place the tenant. So for tenants that we've placed this, over the last several years, we had no evictions. So that's pretty incredible record. And I think it's mostly down to the screening process here that we have in place. First of all, criminal background, that goes without saying. We're going to pull that. And credit check, it's not sufficient to just look at a credit score. Yeah, we have a bare minimum of 600 FICO minimum credit score, but we're looking at all the trade lines. We're looking at DTI, debt to income ratios, lates, collections, liens, judgments, bankruptcies. So someone could have a 625 FICO score, but have a bunch of collections or late payments, liens, all that good stuff. We're definitely not going to approve them, of course. Income verification, this is really essential. All of this is done in-house, by the way. I gotta say that again. We don't outsource any of this. We don't use Rent Spree. We don't use Zillow application or anything like that. All of this is done with our property management team, and we're looking at the pay stubs. We're looking at the bank statements. So 60 days bank statements, 60 days pay stubs. If they're self-employed, you better collect 2 years tax returns, and also independently call their employer. Google, if they work at Boeing, Google Boeing and find their HR department and send an independent employee authorization form and have someone from the HR send it back, verifying that they're actually employed, making the salary that they say they make on the application. So if you triple verify the income, you make sure there's no inconsistencies among the documents that you're receiving from the tenant, you call the current landlord, and more importantly, you call the prior landlord. So we require previous landlord references, 36 months of residential landlord history, 2 prior landlords. And the current landlord sometimes just tells us whatever they think we want to hear because they got a problem tenant. But if we call the prior landlord, that's who no longer has a dog in the fight, and they're going to just tell us the truth.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why we place a lot of emphasis on calling the prior landlords.
And can I say that because I, have met landlords who self-manage and who will go and list their properties by themselves, and how easy it is to just skip one of these steps. For example, maybe you're having a very busy day and you're in the midst of screening a tenant because you're self-managing, and maybe you've tried the previous landlord 2 times and he or she didn't pick up the phone, and you're like, okay, well, I got to go back to work now, so we'll just skip that part. That is not allowed here at Marshall Reddick. That is a very important step, along with all the other steps that you're seeing here. The verification, ensuring that all those boxes get checked and that none of those screening techniques get overlooked.
Absolutely. An average application takes us a couple of days to process because there's a lot of people power put into this process, and that's how we have very limited default evictions and late payments.
Yeah.
Now, after the tenant is screened, they're going to be approved formally. We provide you with their basic criteria, their credit range, their income range, all that good stuff. And we move forward with the lease agreement. They pay us a security deposit. They pay us the first month's rent. We do a full move-in inspection. And of course, We document everything with photos that's transparent to you and to the tenant. We have them sign off on a move-in checklist. And then when they move out, we hold them accountable to any damages that are in excess of normal wear and tear based on the pre-inspection photos. This is a property management snapshot of what we do here at Marshall Reddick. It's just a turnkey service. I call it armchair real estate investing. I own out-of-state property, Marshall Reddick, in the markets that we manage. Marshall Reddick manages it for me. I enjoy my life too much to have tenants call me.
It can be a lot. It can be a lot.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating sometimes. So I just have, our lovely folks in Texas deal with it for me. So yeah, that's the armchair side of things, is I get to sit back and get my rent check. And from a tenant perspective, it's very similar. They can access us 24/7 for maintenance issues. They can log in, they can see their lease, they can pay automatic payments for their rents. We make it very simple for the tenants to pay us rent. Of course, that's the number one thing, right? Collecting that rent check. So, and then we want to make sure that our properties are taken care of. So we're doing all the repairs, all the maintenance, upkeep, documentation, and we help you with your accounting at the end of the year. I wanted to provide a quick example of a property that we recently leased and brought on board at Marshall Reddick. That was a fantastic decision to convert from a primary into an investment. This was a beautiful Manhattan Beach condo. It was a 3-bed, 2.5 bath. The owners, and this is, by the way, is a pro forma that we do for all of our clients. So if you want like a pro forma style analysis, we're happy to go over this with you guys. But essentially, what you can see here is that they purchased this property for just over $675,000 about 10 years ago. Of course, it's appreciated. It's well over $1 million these days. They put about a couple $100,000 into renovating it, and we were able to rent it out for, I want to say let's say $5,500. I think that was $5,500 in rent that we got for that property, Tasso, just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, we did. We rented that out.
Yeah. So when we leased that property out, or $5,000 a month in rent, I'm sorry, my eyes are a little hazy today. When we leased that property out, we take into account all of the taxes, the insurance, the management fees, and that spits out a really healthy cash flow for that owner of around $1,400 a month. So that property is appreciating. It's in a great location. It doesn't need a ton of work because they already put the money into it. It's worth well over $1 million, and it's cash flowing because they have a low interest rate. It's at 3%. They refinanced in 2021, and that's an asset that's going to really make a lot of use when it comes to an investment property. I think if you've got something like this is what you should consider turning into an investment property. But
Absolutely.
Not everyone does.
Right. No, not everyone does. And I mean, I just want to point out this performa here. We're able to run these kind of performas for any type of property in any type of market to see how things pencil out. Chris and I also do these for acquisitions of property out of state for investors. We do them for people potentially looking to rent out here in California or in Texas, Tennessee, Florida. All the numbers are here, right? List price, down payment. This is a purchase performa. We can do the same with rent. All these numbers align to show you your bottom line on what you're either netting or taking away after taxes, HOA fees, utilities, maintenance costs, insurance costs. It goes very into depth.
Yeah, and we even take into consideration your total return on investment based on a specific market's appreciation. We look at long-term trend lines, historical appreciation, take into account down markets, up markets, average that out, and we get you a really nice understanding of what your return is going to be on any investment product. So this just happened to be one that we did recently convert from a primary into an investment. But if you don't have something like that, maybe you got a home that's from 1960 and you haven't done any work to it, and you don't have 200 grand of capital like those clients did to rehab it. Maybe it makes more sense to sell and purchase out of state. So here's a very similar pro forma for an out-of-state new construction property in Texas. So we've got our boots on the ground agents out there in Texas and our other markets that can help facilitate purchasing maybe a new construction development duplex like this property right outside of Austin, where you get a really, really wonderful return and you get to cash flow on it. So Something to think about if you're looking for a help and assistance in making this decision on whether or not out-of-state investing in Texas or Tennessee or Florida makes more sense than investing your money here in California. Now this is just a quick property management life cycle, and Tasso, if you want to chime in. And
absolutely. So the property management life cycle is A to Z on what we need to do to start and then get you into full management. So either Chris or myself or really any advisor at Marshall Reddick will come over and conduct an initial property evaluation. We'll come by, we'll take a look. We have experience in what maintenance needs to take place. It won't be an official maintenance inspection report, but it'll just be a eyes on the property inspection that allows us to get a good understanding of what condition your property is. Sometimes pictures or a phone call won't do the best job of describing. So we'll actually come in, we'll meet you, and we'll do the initial property evaluation. After that, we'll run our rental analysis. And these are CMAs that we do within a mile to a mile and a half of all properties that are either on the market or have closed recently. And we'll take all of those properties and we'll compile them into a comparative market analysis to understand what your property is renting for at this time. What's a good price point, and how can we price strategically to make sure that we're renting in a timely manner, right? Step number 3 is our management agreement. We send that out to you after all this has been complete and you review it. Any questions that you have, you're welcome to call at any time to have them talked through, and we go through the management agreement, have it signed. Takes us to step number 4, our landlord onboarding procedure. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's a pretty quick 1, 2, 3 punch kind of thing. We just got a few things we got to iron out, like making sure your insurance is on the landlord policy, that we're added as additionally insured. Every property that we manage requires landlord insurance. And we just have a little bit of documentation that we got to take care of. Then we go through that make ready repair process that we discuss. And of course, photos and advertising, that's always fun to get pictures back of your really cool house. And you see it in its best light. It's really neat. And then we keep you updated on all of the activity and all of the showings. Once we receive some applications, we screen them and get the lease signed, do the move-in evaluation, make sure that the house is ready to go for that tenant. Even after we've done the initial rent-ready repairs and inspections there, we do another full inspection right before the tenant moves in. Then we got ongoing maintenance, and then we're going to do a lease renewal evaluation, and we're off to the races.
Great stuff.
This is our property management fee structure breakdown. It's probably a little bit challenging to read through all of this, but we make our fees very transparent. We don't really only have a few fees to think about. We don't have setup fees. We don't have maintenance coordination fees. We've got our property management fee of 7% for single family homes, condos and townhouses, and a lease renewal fee of 15% of 1 month's rent. And then when it comes to finding a brand new tenant, if that home is vacant, it's 50% of the first month's rent. So really 3 fees to speak of. And if you want to cover this slide.
Yeah. Why Marshall Reddick? What sets us apart? The first section is the importance of strong website and software. I don't know if we discussed Appfolio and the benefits that it has, but it is the most advanced property management software that is out there. It does everything from allow us to put all kinds of information and documents in a tenant's profile, receive maintenance requests, remind us of when renewals are taking place. There are so many avenues of Appfolio that allow property managers to really utilize and make sure that your property is running 100% efficiently.
I'd say documentation, transparency, and automation, right? Like a lot of it's automated for us, which is great because you don't want your property manager forgetting about a lease renewal, right?
No,
so we get pinged on that information. It starts a whole process, structure for us, and we're kept very, very informed through Appfolio of everything that's going on with all of our properties. And we can run really interesting, creative, fun reports that tell us all sorts of different key points of information, like our default rate, like our eviction rate.
Yeah. We see it all the time with other property management companies. There's a conflict of interest with maintenance. At Marshall Reddick, like Chris discussed before, there is no in-house maintenance team. Everything is outsourced. That means that we are constantly building relationships with new vendors, preserving relationships with current vendors to ensure we're getting the best pricing. We keep them happy by sending them work, and they keep us happy by keeping the prices low. Estimates, invoices are completely transparent, and that when we receive them, it is a direct forward to you guys. Some property management companies will take an estimate, copy paste it onto their own invoice, and just mark the bill up 10 to 15% and charge you, and they upcharge on maintenance. It's a profit margin for them. We do not do that. So we don't have that conflict of interest. Chris, you want to go over cost versus service?
Yeah, I think that's a big question. Anyone should ask themselves on any type of purchase, right? Which is, what do I value more, service or cost? And I think we're just transparently, we're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive. I think we fall right in the middle, but for us, we just put a lot of emphasis on personal service for our clients, being always available. Speaking of responsiveness, I think Tasso and we give away our cell phone number to our clients. So day or night, on the weekends, even on vacation. So we just want to make sure we're taking care of your assets, so you're a client, not just for this year, but for many years. And a lot of our business is based off of referrals. So I really value that relationship.
Yeah, if you get to the point that you are fully in management with us, a property management team member will get back to you within 24 hours. It's not a topic of if, it's definitely a topic of when within those 24 hours will they get back to you.
Yeah, and we highly recommend, if you're looking for a property management company, seek out their reviews online. We get a ton of calls from people that just see our online reviews, and those are from happy clients and even happy tenants. So make sure you're doing your due diligence, looking at Yelp, looking at Google. And of course, just a company that doesn't hold you hostage on a cancellation policy. Just a reasonable and fair cancellation policy is essential when picking a good property management company. We have just a ton of videos on education, on articles and guides on how to buy investment property, how to property manage, how to find good markets, all sorts of stuff. We don't charge for any of it. It's really just, we want to put this information out there so that you eventually use us either as a property manager, or you hire us to help you find your next investment purchase or any type of purchase. And of course, we encourage you guys to take advantage of our free market data packet. Every property that we have in one of our markets is associated with a data packet. So if you guys are interested in Clarksville, Tennessee here, we've got reams of data, and that shows the employers that are in the market, that shows the unemployment rate, that shows the job market, and all the statistical data you would ever want to know about before you make a decision to purchase in a new market. So take advantage of that for sure. And then of course, we rate all of our properties on a scale of luxury to D class. Really what this means is every property belongs in a property class. So whether that's luxury A, B, C, or D, and it's based off of the median house price of the metropolitan area that it's in. You know, Clarksville's metropolitan area is not the same as Los Angeles. LA is about $1.2 million these days for a single family. Well, Clarksville is about 250 grand. So if you have an acquisition or a purchase of a single family house, it's 100% of the median price. So $1.2 million in LA, you've got yourself a borderline A or B class property. So something that's probably going to be more focused on appreciation. A is more focused on appreciation. It's going to attract those white collar tenants that are looking for, you know, a really nice, safe community, low crime. Whereas if you got a property that is, you know, 50% of the median house price in LA, you're looking at what, South Central, something like that, for 600 grand. You know, it'd be a rough area, higher crime. It's going to attract a different quality of tenant. So
absolutely.
I say A stands for appreciation, B stands for a bit of both, C stands for cash flow, and D stands for don't do it. Yeah, just don't even think about it, because that's going to be your Section 8. That's going to be all of the different, you know, type of situations that you guys hear horror stories about. So, and then this is our wonderful faces here at the end. If you guys are interested in ever scheduling a consultation with Tasso and I, just to discuss whatever situation you're in when it comes to real estate, we'd love to learn more about it and learn about your goals,
Yeah.
criteria, where you got a property, where you're thinking about buying or selling, and we're here to help in any way we can.
Yeah, our goal here and our job here is to tailor a custom plan that works with your goals. And we sit and we do this for clients. We go through every single possible option to make sure that you are utilizing every single resource we have to ultimately get to your goals.
Yeah, and consultations are free, by the way.
They are.
So thanks guys so much for attending. We really appreciate it. At the end of the webinar, you're going to get a little bit of a questionnaire here. Please feel free to fill it out and give us your feedback. We're always interested. We're going to look through the questions here, see if there's any questions that you see here, Tasa.
We got a good one on what occurs when a tenant places a maintenance request. So our maintenance requests are processed through our system that we were discussing earlier. A tenant can call in a maintenance request and we will refer them back to the website where they will need to document what is going on and place a couple of photos, at which point we will ultimately get on the phone and try to first troubleshoot it. Our maintenance coordinators and people in maintenance go through a 2-week troubleshooting course that really resolves about 40% of all smaller work orders that come in. So, in my time in property management, I saw a lot of garbage disposals where, oh, my garbage disposal is out. Well, let's go ahead and check a couple of things. Like, have you pressed the little red button to reset it? Wow, it's already. Did you check to see that it's plugged in? Oh, there we go, it's on now. Or a certain number of outlets are out. What do I do? Some property management companies are hasty, or they'll call out an electrician. We'll get a $50 bill when they could have just tested out the breaker. You'd be surprised.
If they're profiting on maintenance, what are they going to do? They're going to send out their contractor very first thing at the drop of a hat, as opposed to us. It takes a lot of time and energy to schedule independent contractors who'd rather troubleshoot on the phone. So great question. And we're going to wrap it up, let you all out of here early. We really appreciate it, guys. And of course, if you guys have any other questions that you can think of, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll see you on the next webinar.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.